Hello, Rush Nerds! This is Terrence, the Rock Sponge, also the host of Pink Floyd Central, and TJR's favorite rock album series, and co-host of the Terrence and Mark Experience podcast. Links are below. And today, we are going to go to the year 40 years ago for Rush on this second episode of Clockwork Reviews, my Rush review show, and on my Rush channel, Clockwork Reviews, where I'm going to review. I was going to do two separate albums from Rush in two separate episodes, but these two came out within the same calendar year. That both albums celebrated their 40th anniversary this year, and one of which celebrates its 40th anniversary this month as of this filming. So we're going to review the first two Rush albums to feature drummer Neil Peart. We're going to Fly By Night, and then have A Caress of Steel. Fly By Night and Caress of Steel, both released in 1975, 40 years ago. But before I talk about this, I will talk about Fly By Night. This album came out first in February of 75. I was not alive yet. And there were some changes between the first album and Fly By Night. This is the cover of the album. On the original vinyl record, this was the front and the back cover. And this was the inner sleeve, because this copy I have from the Sector box set, which is highly recommended. I have all three of these. So if you want the remasters, go for the Rush albums, buy the Sector box sets. If you have surround sound, the albums sound great in them. Fly By Night was the first album to feature this gentleman here, Neil Peart, who replaced original drummer John Rutsey. And they didn't know where to start for replacements. But then one day, good old Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson decided to audition for a new drummer after their first drummer, John Rutsey, decided to quit. Geddy Lee remembers auditioning for Neil Peart from this 1988 interview in the studio for the Making and Moving Pictures. Geddy, explain how you got Neil into the fold.
We really didn't know how to start, so we just really went with recommendations from other musicians that we knew. Someone had mentioned Neil's name to one of our managers at the time. He told us about him. We said, well, go see the guy. So he drove out to St. Catharines, where Neil was working in his father's farm equipment store. And at that time, Neil had just, I think, a year earlier, had come back from trying to make it in Britain, and had sort of resigned himself to not being happy with the way his career was going, and was happy working for his father and playing drums on the weekends in local bands. So it's kind of ironic for him, because here came an opportunity that he had covered half the earth looking for, kind of when he least expected it, and came walking in the door for him. At the time, he'd never written any lyrics. Had never thought of it, I don't think. And when he joined the band, really, we had 1 week to rehearse before our first American tour. And we had a date, like 8 days later, to play at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, opening for Uriah Heep and Manfred Mann. So, that was first and foremost in our mind, and we were just looking for a drummer. We never thought about, lyrics, anything like that. The more we got to know Neil, the more we realized his immense knowledge of the English language and his interest in reading. And he was a very different person for us, and a person full of ideas and very verbose. And Alex and I just looked at each other and said, this is the guy to solve all our problems.
Thanks, Geddy, for the insight on how you got Neil into Rush. And yes, Neil's first gig with Rush was opening for Uriah Heep and Manfred Mann in Pittsburgh in 1974. But before they got to recording this fine album, Fly By Night, they did a couple of originals that didn't make the album, like Garden Road, Fancy Dancer, which are all on a live concert bootleg recording called ABC 1974, which is not available in the US and Canada, so you have to order from Amazon in Britain to get it. But a highly recommended live performance, and those songs did kick ass, especially Garden Road, which had that sort of Black Sabbath-y sort of vibe to it, with that heavy riff. And, but unfortunately Rush did not ever record a studio version of that track. And I forgot to mention on the first episode that their first single was You Can't Fight It, which preceded the debut album, and that was an okay song. And the B-side was a cover of Buddy Holly's Not Fade Away, one of the best covers I heard of that song. The other great cover of it was done by the Rolling Stones in their debut album. Much better than the Grateful Dead. Sorry. But once Rush finished up touring to support the debut album, which saw them opening for Manfred Mann and Uriah Heep, and also opening for Kiss, yes, the same four makeup demons in makeup, Rush went back to Toronto Sound Studios in Toronto, Canada to work on their second album, which came out in February 1975, Fly By Night. That owl on the album cover. Sorry. My warped humor. And the album came out in February 75, around the same time my brother was born, funnily enough, my older brother. And this album is a great sophomore effort, and proved that Rush were not going to have the sophomore jinx on this album. And unfortunately the album did not sell well. I'll post the chart listing of where it peaked when this is over. But I do know that my first memory of this album was hearing the title track on rock radio, and hearing the live version of I Tour on the Snow Dog on All the World's a Stage. Still arguably the best version of that track. Or on the half of All the Worlds I heard, I should say, in '88. Then I got Fly By Night properly on cassette in July of 1990, thanks to an old friend of mine who's now in the clink for murder, Chris Jansky, you bastard. He gave me his cassette copy, which was an old mid-'80s copy. The thing just deteriorated after a short while of playing because it was on its last legs. And then I reacquired it in September of 1990. My mother paid for it, of course. Found in the cheap bin for $5. Needed to refill the hole in my Rush collection. My mother, God bless her, bought me the tape. And I wound up having two copies of this because this album also appeared like the first three albums on the Rush Archives LP set, which was their first three albums brought together. And on the cassette versions of the first three albums, the track listing were just like the original vinyl record. I'll talk about the cassette track listing when I'm done with my review, but let's get into this fine album. And we begin with the first real song written by Geddy Alex and Neil together, Anthem, and it would not be the last. This rocker just begins with that and goes into just a killer, heavy, hard rocker. Excuse me, Geddy Lee still doing the Robert Plant on acid thing, as critics called it. Geddy had a great singing voice in those days. And when you hear him talk, he doesn't sound like what he sings. He has like a deeper speaking voice than singing voice. And this song is just heavy, bludgeoning, proving the band could still write kick-ass tunes. And this song was another example why this album ruled. Anthem, killer opener. I even love the ending with the little drum fills from Neil, proving that he was a superior drummer to John Rutsey. Not to take anything away from John, but Neil fucking just smoked on this track, and the band just kicked ass on this song. Anthem, great opener. The band would continue to play the song into 1980, and then resurrected it briefly on a medley for the Roll the Bones tour, and then part of the medley for the R30 tour, and then apparently played it in full on the R40 tour, although Geddy now has to sing lower notes than what he sang back in 1975 because his voice is now sounds like borderline yodel. Not to bash Getty, but his voice is not what it used to be, but his bass playing is still kicking ass. Next is a song called Best I Can, which was one of the last songs that Geddy Lee would write by his lonesome. And boy, did this song rule. This heavy rocker. Just the chorus itself, as I read the lyrics here. You can tell me that I've got no class. Look around, you'll see who's laughing last. Don't give me speeches because they're oh so cold. Leave me alone and let me rock and roll. I do the best that I can. I'm just what I am. Ain't it the fucking truth? Best I Can. Great song. Heavy. Fucking, hard rocking, killer, kick ass. Not much more to say, but hard rock, killing, and kick ass. Alex's guitar solo is shredding like mad. I love this song. Next is a Alex Lifeson Neil Peart collaboration called Beneath, Between, and Behind. And let me say something about this song. This song, just like the two before it, rules. What a killer track. In fact, I think the only time Rush did play this live was on the Permanent Waves tour in 1980, which thankfully was documented on the Exit Stage Left Live album. That's where I first heard this song, because I heard Exit Stage on the radio months before I got the Fly By Night album. Although the studio version does kick ass, I think they did play it in 75 as well. The version on Exit Stage has beat just by a cunt hair. Pardon my French, I know I shouldn't be saying the C word, but how else do I explain its godliness? But I love Beneath, Between, and Behind. And musically it was Alex Lifeson, lyrics by Neil Peart. Killer track. And then we end side one with the band's first epic length song. Song almost 9 minutes, called By Tor in the Snow Dog. This song would continue to be in their set list up through 1981, up to the Moving Pictures tour. I mean, they played it in full on, I think, on all headlining shows of the Fly By Night tour, Carissa of Steel tour, 2112 tour, and All the World's tour. But I know from Farewell to Kings through Moving Pictures, they only played half of it, and then they played the first half of it the first 3 sections when I went to see them in 2002 on the Vapor Trails tour, and then again in 2004 on the R30 tour. And of the condensed versions, I think the R30 tour owns all other live versions. Although the one from Permanent Waves Live 1980, with Alex Lifeson doing the guitar work on the Fender Strat, the whammy bar stuff, that's the definitive version. But it's not a live album, official live album. But By Tor just kicks ass, split into 4 sections. At the Tobes of Hades is first. Tobes of Hades, live life, make your ring, don't lie. And I first heard this song on All the World's Stage when I played side 2 and side 3 of my uncle's record, because he only had record 2, record 1 was missing. So I would not hear the full double album until 1990. That review was on the next episode. That's the first section, is at the Tobes of Hades. Then Across the Sticks, which talks about 2 characters named after a couple of dogs. One dog named By Tor, who was a German Shepherd, and then a white dog named Snow Dog that their tour manager named Howard Hearns Ungerleider was looking after. But the battle sequence, they only would wind up performing 2 portions of it after 1976, being Challenge and Defiance, which is the da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, and then the 7/4 War Führer was the drum solo, which I think the best performance of that drum track was from 1980, St. Louis. Neil using those Tamas, not to knock the Slingerlands, but those Tamas he played from 80 to 84 were to kill for. And the 7/4 War Führer ends with a big crash, and then that weird noise sound is the aftermath, and then After the aftermath comes in a drum roll from Neil into the drum fill, and then into the Hymn of Triumph section, which is the guitar solo of Alex's, played in the slow tempo. And then right when it goes after the da 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 into the epilogue section, which is the battle over and the dust is clearing. The evil Bytor lost the war to the Snow Dog and got sent back to hell, but Bytor would reappear as a good guy on the next album, and the Snow Dog was victorious and the land of the overworld was saved again. And then if you had the vinyl record of this, the end of the song where you hear the chimes goes into the run-out groove, so you had to manually pick up the record to lift up the needle to put the record back to flip over to side 2. On the Archives version, Rush Archives, they left the chimes going in for a lengthy time before it fades out. And on the original cassette of Fly By Night, for those who had it, like myself, the 80s reissue where songs were in a jumbled place. But now you flip over to side 2. We begin with the Geddy Lee Neil Peart collaboration, which was the album's title track. Fly By Night, My Way From Here. A song that Alex Lifeson, for some strange reason, hates. He hates this song. He just does not like it, because in 2002 a lot of people said, oh, they'll play it live, and Alex Lifeson's like, maybe we won't. Because he doesn't like the song. Geddy Lee and Neil Peart are still proud of it. Radio's still proud of it. As I read this, the song got the most airplay from the album, still gets played. Why try? I know why. This feeling inside me says it's time I was gone. Clear head, life ahead, new life ahead. I want to be king now, just want one more time. Fly by night, away from here, change my life again. Fly by night, goodbye my dear, my ship isn't coming and I just can't pretend. What a great song. The second verse, the chorus. Alex Lifeson's guitar solo was catchy, punchy to the point. Very melodic rocker this song is. And then the bridge section, which was called the other part, Rush would not perform live after 1975 because they would segue into In the Mood on the 2112 tour, documented on All the World's a Stage, and then it would segue same thing on the Farewell to Kings tour, which is on the Different Stages live album, which I'll review in a separate episode in the future. But the title track, The Fly By Night, sorry Alex Lifeson, but it rules. Next track, Making Memories, which is an acoustic ditty for the most part, written by Geddy, Alex, and Neil, and it features some of Alex's greatest acoustic guitar playing. Geddy's vocal during the verse was done in a normal. There was no fade, no effects added, just plain singing. And then when the drums come in during the chorus, we're having good days and we hope they're gonna last. Our future still looks brighter than our past. We need to feel no worry, no reason to be sad. Our memories remind us, maybe road, life's not so bad. And Alex Lifeson did something rare that he would not do until the title track to Clockwork Angels. Some slide guitar. He does a slide guitar solo on this track. The only other example was when they played on a live TV show in Canada in 1974. This is the only recorded studio track to have Alex Lifeson on electric slide guitar for the solo. He wouldn't do more slide after this, but this song is excellent song. I dig it. I love it. And then we come to the song Rivendell, written by Geddy Lee and Neil Peart, written about, as I read this thing, taken from the Lord of the Rings. This song was inspired by the Lord of the Rings saga. This song is just a catchy little acoustic ditty. I dig it. And has Geddy Lee on classical guitar, as I read here. Alex Lifeson on electric guitars, and Neil wrote the lyrics, although it's just Geddy and Alex playing on the track. But I dig it. And then we end the album with the Geddy Lee Alex Lifeson collaboration, in the End, which is one of two songs where Neil did not write the lyrics. And the song was written by Geddy and Alex, I believe, before Neil joined the band. And it begins in the key of C, with Alex strumming on the acoustic guitar and Geddy singing the song in the beginning in a deep octave, which would not be the last time we would do so either, because in the future he would just start singing lower and lower as he got older and older. Thinking it's going to be acoustic, I think it goes into the hard rock after the quiet first verse. And this song was played live dating back to 74, then again in 75, and then on all headlining shows for the 2112 tour was played, which a live version does appear on All the World's a Stage. And if you watch my review of All the World's coming up soon, you'll know that the live version of this is superior to this, but I still love this. Fly By Night, upon its release, cracked in the lower reaches of the Billboard Top 200. It was in like number 140 something. The chart rankings right below here. And it would not go platinum or gold until 1993. But my God, this album, classic. This was one of the last Rush CDs I acquired, because in 1993 I was collecting. I spent the first 2 years of CD collecting the Pink Floyd and Rush catalogs on CD, upgrading them both, because both are my favorite bands of all time. And Fly By Night, great album, especially this reissue, which brings the remastered CD, newly remastered by Andy Van Dett, and the album in 5.1 surround sound, remixed by Richard Chaike, to sound superior and packaged like the original vinyl record, and the gatefold to replicate the inner sleeve. Gold. This album, I give a 5-star, just like the previous. And then later in 1975, Rush unleashed their third album, Caress of Steel, released in September of 1975. At that time, I was in the womb. I was in my mom's uterus, forming. So yes, I was technically alive, but not fully functioning yet. And Caress of Steel was recorded during the summer of 1975, after their second tour with Kiss that year. And like the previous album, was produced once again by Terry Brown, who would produce all those early Rush albums. And the album was just a great... This album is a highly overlooked gem, and as far as my favorites of the first 4 Rush studio albums, this is my favorite. I know I'm going to piss some fans off about 2112, but this album has 2112 beat. Sorry, once I heard the full proper album version of this, once I got the archive set in April of 91, because when I first got this on cassette in August of 90 at Woolworth department stores of all places, which there were some Woolworth department stores here in the States, especially up here in the Northeast. Found it in the $5 bin. My mom, may she rest in peace, paid for it. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention before I talk about this, the cassette track listing of Fly By Night, forgot to talk about that. Side 1 went Anthem, Best I Can, Beneath, Between, Behind, Making Memories, and Rivendell. And side 2 went the title track, In the End, and By Tor and Snow Doctor. Thankfully, I found one appearing the vinyl track listing and CD track listing as nature intended once I got the archive compilation. Now back to Caress of Steel. Sorry for losing track there, but my mind went blank for a second. I was like, ah, shit. And like Caress of Steel, like the first 2 albums, the cassette had an altered track listing, because side 2 would take the sidelong work and not make it a sidelong work. And it wasn't until I got the cassette version of Archive I found out that side 2 was indeed one song with 6 movements. But when I first heard Caress of Steel in the summer of 90, I was familiar with Lakeside Park because I was on All the Worlds, which I only heard record 2, which was sides 2 and 3. Always dug that tune. So when I got this album in 1990, in August of 90, this album blew my ball, hit me right in the balls and said, gothic. And this album was recorded again at Toronto Sound Studios again, co-produced and engineered by Terry Brown. And this was the first time that Hugh Syme would do an album cover for Rush. And ever since then, he's become their Storm Thurgerson. Hugh Syme is to Rush what the late Storm Thurgerson was to Pink Floyd. An album cover genius who would create eye-catching album covers for Rush. But Rush on this album delivered the goods with this album, and I will give you my assessment on this album right now. We begin proceedings with the heavy rocker Bastille Day. This song just coming out of the gate with a heavy hard rocker. This song would be the opening song on the Caressive Steel tour, the 2112 tour, and they would only, and the Farewell to Kings tour, because they would wind up only playing in bits of it in a medley on the Hemispheres tour, the what's the other tour? Hemispheres tour, the Permanent Waves tour, and of course the R30 tour. But this song, killer rocker, where there's no bread, let them eat cake, there's no end to what they'll take. You know, flaunt the fruits of noble birth, wash your salt into the earth, but they're marching to Bastille Day, named after that French holiday of the War of Bastille, one of those things. And this was the first Rush album where all three members of the band wrote all the songs together. Bastille Day, killer rocker. And they did play this as an instrumental on the R30 tour, this intro to the song. Just a killer song. I always loved the tune, I still do to this day, Bastille Day, and it's appeared on many compilations for Rush, including the Chronicles compilation and on Rush Gold, which was the best of from their Mercury years, 1974 to 87, which took the two retrospectives and made it into one double compilation album, which rules. Next is a song called I Think I'm Going Bald, which musically some call an inferior In the Mood. Like Geddy's vocal performance on this track, he's just screaming his fucking ass off. I think I'm going bald. You're like, whoa, man, this song fucking just rules. And I love the way it changes in, you know, for the chorus section, the walk down Vanity Fair, dun dun dun, and every lane everywhere, dun dun dun, Wall Street shuffles there. Dressed in morning hair. Go wild! Alex Lifeson's guitar solo just went completely ape shit. I fucking love this tune. I Think I'm Going Bald. Great song. Killer track. I dig it. Next is the song Lakeside Park, which the lyrics were written by Neil Peart about a place not too far from where Neil was born and raised, in the Willowdale suburb of Toronto. It's about a park that him and his buddies used to go to drink and smoke and do all that shit. And just a great song, just killer, excellent, with the heavy guitar riff for the verses, and then the sort of semi-acoustic chorus bit, and then the ending section with it. Everyone will gather on the 24th of May. That section ruled as well. I love the track. Next on this album is the side one closer, which took up 12 minutes of this side. Yes, a lengthy song, but the first 10 plus minute track Rush would ever record, and not the last, the three-part The Necromancer. Neil Peart does the narration at the beginning. As gray traces of dawn trim the eastern sky, the three travelers of Willowdale emerge from the far shadow. It was basically Neil's voice slowed down a whole step, because if you played the song at a little higher speed, you hear Neil's normal speaking voice, but On this, it was slowed down for the brooding beginning of the section of the Necromancer called From the Darkness. Let me just read this here, because I'm trying to make sure. Oh yeah, Into Darkness is the first section. And it's just a slow brooding thing. Basically, musically inspired by the title track to Bridge of Sighs by Robin Trower. If you play them back to back, you can tell Rush were heavily influenced by Robin Trower's Bridge of Sighs on this section. And Geddy, not singing like James Dewar, but Geddy, of course, with his unique silence shrouds the forest as the birds announce the dawn. Just a killer section. And then all of a sudden it stops cold and it goes into this weird, trippy music thing of shreds of black cloud loom over the western skies. The Necromancer keeps watch in his magic prison eyes. And this section is just phenomenal. And then Neil's drums come in. Boom, 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 boom. Then into the da-da, 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 da-da. And then Geddy singing, brooding in the tower, watching over his land. You know, pushing his vocal cords to the limit here. And then they go into a jam section, which is the da-da-da-da-da-da, with Alex soloing on top of it. And just going to town. Ding, ding is over. All of a sudden you hear those weird barking sounds of Prince Bytor coming back in. Right into this thrashy jam section with Alex Lifeson's guitar going completely apeshit. Neil's drumming going at 900 miles an hour. Rush could out-jam those jam bands in 3 fucking seconds. And then it ends with a triumphant return of the villain from Bytor and the Snow Dog, Bytor himself. This time as a hero. The Return of the Prince section. Enter the champion. Prince Bytor appears to battle for freedom from chains of fear. Long years. The spell has been broken. The dark lands are bright. The wraith of the Necromancer soars away into the night, and then the heroes from Wallowdale break free from the Necromancer thanks to Bytor into a happy ending in a major key, because most of this piece was in a minor key. This epic ends in a Picardy third with the section in E, because most of the song was in E minor. This ends in E natural, alternating between 3 chords: E, B, and A, back to B, back to E. And then Alex Lifeson delivering one of his most emotional guitar solos in this track. Boy, did it kick ass. And then you flip the vinyl record over to side 2, and we begin. And for those of you and then side 2 of the album begins with, he's taken up by the 19-minute epic, The Fountain of Labyrinth, for a 20-minute piece, the first 20-minute piece Rush would ever record. And the first section, I Am, is In the Valley, which begins with acoustic guitar played by Alex, 12-string. I am born, I am me. That first section sets the pace of what was about to come. And then it goes from that dun, dun, ding, 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 and then all of a sudden the band comes in. Neil's drum fills are just completely off the charts, and then it goes into the my eyes have just been opened, and they opened very wide. Geddy singing high or reaches his vocal flange to hell. And then this slows down to, yet my eyes are drawn toward the mountain in the east. And then this is the only part in the epic you hear the title of the song. During the second verse, which is the living one long sunrise for things all that are that are new. You know, it's what the British would call light and shade. Shade is the darker, dun, 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 and then the light was the ding, 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 doing a repeat motif of the Yet My Mountain, Yet My Eyes Are Drawn Toward section. Great piece. Then we go to Didax and Narpits, which are anagrams for addicts and parents, which is basically a Neil Peart drum solo. And for years, until I finally read the lyric sheet on the remaster released in '97, I thought they were saying, "Fuck you, rape." And then at the end, I thought they screamed, "Listen!" It turns out he was saying, "Listen!" With Alex and Neil's lower range distorting, Geddy hitting that shriek. But Neil, on this particular section, would prove why he would become one of rock's most important drummers. Next is the third section, No One at the Bridge, which is one of the best pieces of music Rush ever came up with. Excuse me. Flying back, or crying back to consciousness. The coldness grips my skin. Just a killer section, but on the lyric sheet here, they have two of the verses switched around. It has the last section, well, the last verse before the second verse, and the second verse they have before the last verse. Strange here, so, and then it goes into remembering when I first held. Great section, and then it ends with the call out for direction. And then on this particular track, Geddy hits another screaming note. Scream out desperation that no one tends to hear. And his voice was flanged and processed with that section. And Neil doing some unearthly drum fills. And then it goes into an Alex Lifeson guitar solo to end this section in a very majestic way. Just a killer part of this epic. And then we have the acoustic section of this epic called Panacea, which marked the first full song that Geddy Lee sang the full song in a low octave. Of course, he would take this singing approach to the bank, starting with Permanent Waves, but on here, it just hinted at what he would do on future albums, on a lot of songs on future albums, singing in the lower range of his singing voice. And this song, it could have been released as a standalone single, would have done well on pop radio, but the lyrics, a lot of people would have, like, what the fuck are they talking about? Oh, sorry for me on it. Panacea, liquid grace, so let me touch your fragile face. Enchantment falls around me, and I know I cannot leave. And in Panacea, passion pure, I can't resist your gentle lure. My heart will lie beside you, and my wandering body grieves. What a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful section this is. Panacea rules. Next section is Bacchus Plateau, which is an excellent little heavier section that clang, 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 clang. Just a excellent section, and just an awesome little piece. I think they only played this whole epic quite a few times on the Caress Steel tour, but who's counting? But this piece is just so great, so godly, so epic, and the chorus, another foggy dawn. Draw another goblet from the cask of 43. Just an excellent piece. Alex Lifeson's guitar solo at the end hits it out of the ballpark, and then it fades off into the distance, and then we come into a reprise of the first section called In the Valley, called The Fountain, which begins with a and Geddy just shrieking that part with his vocals processed and flanged, and then this is the second time he mentions the Fountain of Lambeth in the piece. I take that back. And at last I fall before the Fountain of Lambeth, and I thought I would be singing, but I'm tired and out of breath. What a great piece and section, and then of course it ends with a repeat of the with him screaming some more, and then the verse section of ding 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 with Alex Lifeson doing a superb guitar solo, then ending with the and then it ends with the reprise of the I am born, I am me, this time with I'm in motion, I am still, I am crying, I am still. And then it ends with still I am, and then thinking the song ends, and you hear a backward chord fade in and a backwards ending to this album. The Caress of Steel, unfortunately, stalled at number 150 some odd when it was released in late 1975. This was Rush's worst-selling album for years. But the members of the band still hold it in high regard, and from this audio from a recent interview a few years back, Neil Peart, Geddy Lee, and Alex Lifeson talk about Caress of Steel and what it meant to them. Guys, explain to these simpletons why this album was great.
Caress of Steel was not well received by the record company. It was not well received by our agents.
Everything took an awful downturn, and it was off the crest of a wave too, because we were so in love with what we'd done, you know? We were so into it and so proud of it. When Caress of Steel pretty much met a deaf ear, the ensuing tour, we were opening acts on smaller tours and playing backwater clubs, and we called it at the time the Down the Tubes tour.
And then with Caress of Steel, we did the whole side, the Fountain of Lambeth, and the Necromancer was kind of like that. It was the start of those longer pieces. I know we played Caress of Steel once for Paul Stanley. We just got it. We played it in our van for him one night, and you could see that he didn't get it. A lot of people didn't get it, and we wondered if we even got it.
I think we were pretty high when we made a lot of that record, and it sounds like it to me.
There you have it, folks. Even they agree with me that this album was great. Weird as hell. A lot of people didn't get it. And unfortunately, during this period for this album, the band were playing smaller venues, and the tour to support this album was jokingly called the Down the Tubes Tour. I think you must remember in 1975, Tony Tennille wrote the verse, and on top of that, this album had some stiff competition when it was released. Kiss Alive was released, Jethro Tull's Minstrel in the Gallery, of course Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here just came out, so of course the album was doomed commercial-wise, because when you had big guns like that hitting at the same time in the record stores, you were screwed. And the album, like I said, didn't sell well initially, but would eventually go gold and platinum in 1993. And look at the back cover. Front cover is one thing, back cover rules as well. The track listing on the cassette went Bastille Day, Did Axe and Arpits at Lakeside Park, and the Necromancer side 2 went In the Valley, I Think I'm Going Bald, No One at the Bridge, Panacea, Bacchus Plateau, and The Fountain. Once I heard the remastered CD, or the cassette, the archives version with the original album sequence, I rarely played the regular cassette ever again. And this was one of the albums up from Rush I got on CD at Christmas in 1991, and then wound up upgrading to its remastered counterpart in 97. Now I have a new remaster from the Archive 1 box set, and that covers 2 more episodes, 2 albums in one lengthy episode, because the next episode, I repeat the same exercise with their 1976 classics, 2112, and All the World's a Stage. So until the next episode of Clockwork Reviews, this is Terrence saying, don't take no shit from nobody. God bless. Good night.